Hello, everyone. I'm Harpreet Singh, welcoming you to the Future of Work Pioneers podcast. Today, we are speaking with Michael Fraccaro, the Chief People Officer of Mastercard. In his role, Michael is responsible for all HR functions globally, including driving cultural transformation and building leadership capability. Prior to joining Mastercard, Michael was a core member of the HR leadership team at HSBC Group in Hong Kong. Earlier, he held senior HR positions in banking and financial services in Australia and the Middle East, working extensively across different cultures. Michael and I were introduced some time back by the Mastercard CEO, Ajay Banga, another great leader. During this time, I've had the opportunity to interact with many individuals at Mastercard, and I can say that it is a company that cares deeply about not only its employees, but also the broader communities it serves. The social impact that the Mastercard Foundation has been making is phenomenal. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, Harpreet. Glad to be here.
Thank you, and glad to have you. And you've had an international background that one can expect from someone leading an international organization. Tell us about your journey and how this international experience has shaped you as an individual.
Yes, so my journey actually, it's almost like accidental journey, if you will, because when I left university, there was one thing I knew. I actually studied education and was a secondary high school teacher in one of the suburbs in Sydney. And for me, that was my focus. But I had a mentor at the school. She was a lady who was advanced in her career, and she spoke to me about 3 years into my tenure as a high school teacher, and said, "Michael, maybe you could do something else." And I wasn't sure whether it was a vote of confidence that she saw something in me, or whether it was a vote of no confidence. She thought I was better served doing something else. But it really spurred a really fundamental question in my mind about what is it that I want to do. And at that point in Australia, the government had been investing through what was called a training guarantee levy, where industries which had a payroll over a certain amount had to spend a percentage, was 1%, 1.5%, 2% of their payroll on training. And there was this big wave of demand, people with some kind of education and interest in training to enter into the corporate world. And that was really my foray, my step into the corporate world. And I worked for a company that was in technology, that basically developed banking application software for the banking sector across Australia. So that was sort of the start into human development, human capital management development. And from there, I just got this huge interest to invest in my own education as well, both university to accommodate or accumulate other qualifications, but also with this idea about what pathways my education could actually take me to. And so after about 10 years working in this organization, there was an opportunity to work abroad in Saudi Arabia. And I took an opportunity to pack up things. I had a young family at the time, and we moved to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and I worked for a bank there for a couple of years. And I guess the story, I'm not going to go through every aspect of it, but the story for my career is always these turning points. You know, the lady at my school, the turning point around this opportunity in the Middle East. And then when I came back to Australia, there was another turning point where an opportunity came up to join HSBC in Hong Kong. But there are always these learning points. And I find that for me, it was always about this curiosity, this ambition, always connected to people and advancing organizations and people. I know it sounds a little cliche, but that was the way it started. And I would never dreamed when I started off my career that I'd be sitting here in this company, Mastercard, running the people function in a Fortune 500 company with a great CEO and great people and colleagues here. So I'm living the dream, if you will.
And quite an adventurous background you have there. Most people would hesitate to move to another country, let alone a different continent, and you did that 3 times.
I did, and a lot of support from family, but there's a lot of lessons learned along the way. You learn a lot about yourself, your resilience level, your appetite for change and adapting to different environments, but also the personal side. The impact on your family and the challenges of moving families and young children, impact it has on parents that don't want to see you leave. The children that are adventurous and so forth, and obviously your wife and your partner. So there's a lot of factors to contend with, but it's a huge learning, and I always encourage individuals that having a career conversation, you've got to do what's right for you, and there's no one right or wrong approach to this. But for me, I've had this amazing journey, and what I've seen and what I've been able to experience and what I've learned from being in other cultures and different environments, it's just been incredible. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, that's great. So we are discussing future work today, right? So what does that mean to you? Someone who's leads a massive organization.
Yeah. Look, we've been discussing future of work for a number of years. In fact, when I first came into the role as Chief People Officer, one of the first pieces of work that I did with my team was to actually talk about the future of work. What did it really mean for our organization? What does it mean for the industry that we operate in? What does it mean for society? And so we did quite a bit of research up front, working with our analytics team. We worked with some academics, we worked with industry leaders and with our peers to really uncover what is the future of work. Because in the early phases, it was all about, automation, robotics, artificial intelligence. All of this was going to take jobs away. And there was a level of anxiety and fear that was being brought in. So there was a psychology and behavioralist aspect to the future of work. But there was the other side, which was about, what are the great opportunities that come from reimagining the way that work gets done. And that was really the first start of how we began thinking about it at Mastercard, laying out all of the different aspects that we need to consider. But then what are the practical implications for our work and what we do, and what are the kind of policies and benefits that we need to think through to really look at the future of work. So we did a couple of things. One was around, we were early adopters for technology and technology transformation, sort of one piece. So we, used chatbots and experimentation with artificial intelligence to increase capacity of basic work and function. So if I think about our global business service center, where we process, accounts payable, accounts receivable, basic HR questions and so forth, there are numerous tools that are available that as we kept growing as a company, now since I've been here, we've grown 5 times the size from when I joined in 2012. We couldn't just keep growing our human capital. We also had to find efficiencies, and this was a way of finding and extracting capacity in our workflows by using technology. So that's of one piece. But the other piece about the future of work really came to a part where I really love working for Mastercard is around the cultural aspects. What does it mean? What are the issues that people are dealing with as it comes to the future of work. And so we've also changed the profile of the people that we have. We have people that we've got over 55% of the workforce is millennial. In India, where we've got a big operation, it's 82%. So we've got a multi-generational workforce, and the future of work means different things for people at different stages of their career. So we've had to think very differently about things like health and well-being, mental well-being. We've had to think about what do we do from a constant learning aspect and culture to ensure that learning is a really core aspect of our culture. And so there's a number of those aspects, well, from a cultural aspect that we've had to draw into the organization as well, and the kind of behaviors that you need as you think about the future of work. What's interesting now is we're actually thinking about the future of work. And I think this crisis, this COVID-19 crisis, has really forced us to rethink about our work and how work is done. So I'll give you a statistic. 97% of our workforce today is all working remotely. There is 3%, and essentially the 3% are some of the essential workers. We need to come in because we've got cables and we've got certain activities that require people to be physically in the premise, but everyone else is working from home. So we're now working through, with all of these changes, what will the future look like? Do we need to have these big facilities and buildings? When we bring people back into the office, what will the office layout look like? How do we practice social distancing? Do we have physical meetings? Will we be doing meetings remotely? So there's a whole range of themes that we're now exploring at the moment. So I continue to find this topic fascinating, and I think we're learning as we're going along in this journey.
This episode is brought to you by Experfy. Incubated in Harvard Innovation Lab, Experfy provides custom future of work solutions, such as private talent clouds and skill taxonomies. Experfy differentiates itself by using subject matter experts to pre-vet and pipeline candidates for AI and high-end technology skills. However, Experfy Talent Cloud platform is skill agnostic and can be licensed to build custom talent clouds for any and all skills. In a different use case, enterprises interested in employer intermobility can license the Experfy platform to create an internal gigs marketplace where interested employees can be algorithmically matched to projects, gamifying their learning experience.
Yeah, so we've all come to appreciate remote work, and I think there are obviously pros and cons of remote work. But generally, what I found, so I started my career in the financial services as well, and I find that banks and financial institutions are often not as open to such changes. And COVID-19 has kind of become the agent of digital transformation in ways we'd never imagined, right? So you think that people are going to be more open-minded in the financial industry as a result?
I really do. I really believe so. I mean, I'm on a number of CHRO network calls, and we're discussing these particular themes. And there's going to be certain job within financial services. Think about bank branches, where people are doing their transactions. There can be some reconfiguration of how a bank branch looks like and how customers will be dealt with. But generally speaking, there are a number of jobs that can be done remotely, and I think there was some stigma, even with some managers and leaders, that if you're not present physically in the office where the manager is and where the team is, how can work be done? And I think this social experiment of what we're going through right now with COVID-19 is actually demonstrating that people's productivity, the way that people interact, social cohesion, all those things that you think can happen in a physical environment can also happen in a virtual environment. And there's pluses and minuses with both, but I think there is going to be much more of an appetite at the other end of this than there was, because in most cases proven that it can work.
Mm-hmm. And another aspect of this is the contingent workforce, freelancers, right? When you think of future of work, that's what kind of pops in your mind as well. And how would you describe interaction of such people or use of such folks within your organization?
Yeah, so we do use contingent workers and gig workers for certain projects, and quite often, where there are peaks of work we require, let's say from a technology perspective, we will engage with contingent workforce organizations to bring in specific skills that we need to complete a task. And when that project or task winds down, either they get moved and redeployed to something else, or they wind off. I do see that in the future there will be a continuation of the use average of contingent workers. Certainly for our industry, I'm not sure about others, but I do see that. What I would say is that there is this aspect around how do you ensure that when you're leveraging these contingent workers, you can be very clear and deliberate and intentional about the kind of work they're doing. How do you check for the quality of the work? How do you ensure, even from a security perspective, that you're able to vet kind of work that's being done from a safety and security perspective as well? And I think it does raise some of those questions as well. But I believe that we'll continue to see that as a key part of our workforce as we do with our regular full-time employees.
Mm-hmm. So other than the question around how do you manage a freelancer, are there other concerns, and perhaps security of data, and what are the other things that are hurdles that need to be overcome?
Yes, some of it is the security of data, and being very clear about what kind of access individuals, contingent workers will have to data. I think it's an important part. The other important part is around commitment to the mission. And so, quite often, you'll have contingent workers that roll in, roll out. But you also want them to be very committed to your cause and your mission, and therefore that's another important part. And so there is a line that you have to also ensure it's not crossed. There is a blurring of the line around contingent workers and who they are, and your employees and who they are from a culture perspective as well. And I think as we continue to go through this journey of blending workforce as well, being very mindful about how you still get the same level of output commitment with contingent workers, because at Mastercard, at least I can speak from our experience here, do treat people like one big family. There are aspects where if you're a contingent worker, the badge you wear is a different color to your regular employee, and that's done from a security perspective. But you want to ensure that they still feel engaged in what you do and how you operate. And I think there's some of the other consequences or impacts that we continue to work through.
I think that it brings me to the next question around culture. And Mastercard's done a tremendous job in building a people-centric culture. Can you speak to that and how you've been able to achieve that?
Yes, the culture is an amazing story here at Mastercard, and I would premise it around a 10-year journey, because we know cultures don't shift overnight, but it does start with leadership, and a lot of this credit goes to our CEO, who, when he came into the organization, he recognized a tremendous amount of opportunity and potential from the business perspective. He saw that Mastercard was seen as a credit card company, and the joke at the time was that Mastercard was a place where bankers would come and retire. It was almost like a country club feel. And he felt that there is so much untapped potential that the only way to achieve, the business outcomes and what we were promising the street and our customers was really to shift the culture. And it was a couple of aspects. One was around the kind of diversity of people that we'd bring in, the kind of experiences, the kind of backgrounds. So not just recruiting from, single sources like banks or other processes, but also from technology, government, retail, consulting, a whole range of, and the premise there was, if we're going to be, this powerhouse in the payment space, the only way that we could innovate was actually by creating an environment where anyone from any background would be welcomed, and that their ideas would actually add value, rather than having some person who comes from the same school or the same background be thinking the same way. That's not going to propel innovation. And so it was those kind of principles that really helped us think through the culture. And then we led on 3 critical principles of culture. One was around full risk-taking. So the idea here was that if we're going to enter into new markets, new segments, compete in different areas, that we're not always going to have all the information, but we're going to have to make some decisions and actually take some risks, rather than deferring everything to a committee and to another committee to make decisions. The idea was, let's instill full risk-taking into the culture. That was one. The second was around a sense of urgency. So again, linked to the first one, this was all about speed, and that if you're going to innovate, you can't just wait until everything is perfect. You have to push things out, you have to test things, and you iterate along the way, having this sense of urgency rather than bureaucracy. And then the final principle is really around ownership, that part of the culture had to be that if you walked at a cafeteria and you saw a little paper, or you saw a dropping somewhere, you would treat it and treat the place as it was your home. And you wouldn't just pretend that you didn't see it and walk past it. You'd come down and you'd pick it up and you'd put it into the wastebasket. But this whole sense of ownership, that we wanted our people, our employees, to feel a part of this organization, that everything we did was part of a joint ownership. They were really 3 principles. And so our performance management, our leadership, executive programs were all premised around those 3 principles that we encouraged. If I fast forward to 2019, last year, as we continue to grow, and I mentioned we've grown 5 times since when I joined, both organically, but also through acquisitions, the question was, is our culture still relevant today as it was 10 years before? So what we did, my team and some business leaders, we actually did an employee crowdsourcing. We actually reached out to 400 employees from the acquired companies, from the different markets around the world, to say, are these 3 principles that we outlined still relevant? Is there anything different? And so what we landed on was 3 principles still resonate for all our 20,000 employees, but there were a couple of adds to it. One was simplification. So this additional principle that in a world of over-communication, an industry such as ours, where there is so many choices for customers, as well as internally, we need to make things simpler. So that's been an added principle that we've added into our culture. And then the other aspect, the most important one, is decency. That everything that we do is underpinned by this culture of decency. And so RJ, probably a few years ago, talked about, we hire people for their IQ, their EQ, but most importantly is their DQ, the decency quotient. And what this really means is that, we're a winning culture. We want to compete. We want to keep doing great things as a company, but it has to be done the right way. And the decency quotient is a filter, if you will, which basically is there where we say, my hand is not in your face, it's on your back. And the decency quotient is a way of being a reinforcer of all of the elements of our culture that will enable us to go on to better and greater things. And that again filters through to the entire organization. So they're really the key principles of the culture that really I'm proud of where we are today.
No, that's fascinating. So I guess philosophically, one can begin with such a vision, but how do you implement something like that for 20,000 people? How do you actually, realize such a vision?
Yeah. Look, it is. It's not something that you just come in and flip a switch. It is a multi-year journey. Any kind of transformation has to have a vision, but then there's all the enablers. So I think things like for example, job description. So when we were promoting people to apply for jobs in the organization, we would say things like, okay, you need to have 10 years experience in financial services or 15 years. We took that element out. That's a cultural shift. When you take away years of service versus impact and demonstration of certain attributes, that's a big message to the company and candidates to basically say, hey, this organization is really walking the talk around being innovative, and they're valuing me not because I've spent 20 years in a different organization, but for what I can bring to the organization. It's those things. So yes, you can have a big scale program, but PowerPoint presentations and placards on walls aren't going to transform the culture. It's the little nudges, it's these little aspects within your systems that really make the change, and it's the way that people behave. And so, recognizing and rewarding those that live the Mastercard way, as well as being hard on the areas or the individuals that are not following the Mastercard way. And we give people opportunities to learn and to use moments where they may have gone away from the Mastercard way as a teaching, a learning moment. That is really critical in basically instilling this across the organization.
Well, that's great. That's I bet a lot of companies can learn from that. Even startups. As a startup, we have such a hard time building a culture. I can't imagine how it's done at such a large scale. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean that piece about scale is really the one question that RJ and I spoke a lot about, because we said, look, when it was 4,000 people, you know everybody. You could pick up the phone and you know everybody. When you get to 20,000 and you've acquired 10 companies, in a short period of time, you start to lose that personal connection. And so, one of the challenges you have is, how do you scale culture? And it is through some of these mechanisms, but it's the constant reinforcement for your employees through these mechanisms to bring people together. Even things like with the acquisitions, to transfer culture, we have a program to migrate or move talent from the acquired company into Mastercard, and Mastercard people going into the acquired companies, because that transference of knowledge and skills is the only, or one of the ways you can also share culture and best practice. And in fact, we learn as well best practices from other organizations we've acquired. There are elements of other cultures of companies that we've acquired. We say, wow, we love that. And so things like deployment and the urgency piece, which I spoke about, some of the companies bought about were very, very rapid in the way that they did it, because they were small and they were nimble. So we learned from that. So this is an iterative process. You have to find what works for you, but also with the view, this big view of how do you scale and sustain culture. That's extremely important.
And you also have a program around where folks are required to volunteer. for a week?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So we have a number of programs. So one is the volunteer program, volunteering. Essentially, we give every employee 5 days a year to volunteer, and they can do whatever program, whether it's a local community, whether it's a food bank, anything at all. So we have this volunteerism program, which we continue to reinforce. We have CEO Force for Good Awards. So we recognize people at the year end and quarterly around some of the initiatives that people do. So that's very much embedded in the culture. This whole social impact aspect is not just something on the side. It's very much embedded into who we are as well, which is a big draw card as well for our people.
So given this concern for employees, for people in your job, and you kind of touched on this, that technology is going to make many jobs obsolete, right? And there've been McKinsey studies that predict as much as 50 to 70% in some economies. So how do we think about that issue, and how are you thinking about it? What are you trying to do to mitigate the negative impacts of that?
Yeah, I look at it the other way. I look at the great opportunities that technology and transformation brings to the world of work. So for example, a couple of years ago there was talk about cryptocurrencies, and there still is cryptocurrencies, blockchain, artificial intelligence. I mean, we've actually created jobs. We've actually got an AI garage, is what we call it. And so, we've created a lot of other work and opportunities as a result of the advancement of technology. So I do look at it the other way. I think what some of those studies may be missing is that, yes, there are certain types of tasks and activities that will go away, but there will be a push and a drive to other industries and to other jobs and activities. I think that the fundamental message that we give to our employees is around, look, the world is going to keep changing, going to keep moving. Technology is rapidly advancing. And the only way for you to remain relevant and engaged from a work perspective is to devote time to learning. And so, if I think about our operations technology function as an example, we went out for many years, or a couple of years ago, and said, look, every employee in our operations technology is given at least 2 hours per week to learn, 100 hours a year minimum, where it's not frowned upon. It's actually encouraged for them to continue to learn. We've done partnerships with universities. In fact, one of the universities in St. Louis, where is our main operations technology area, cybersecurity is such an important skill and area of expertise for our business that we partnered with Washington University as well as our own technical experts, and we've developed a curriculum. And the professors will go into our campus in St. Louis and been training our teams over a 3-month period, and they get a certificate at the end. And we're scaling that in other parts around the world. So, this whole thing about the future of work and transformation, there may be some industries where it's more impacted, and particularly in areas, in manufacturing or transportation, so forth. Then there are certain industries that clearly will be impacted. But for us, we actually just pivot it to an upside and an opportunity.
Well, that's a great way to think about it. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and with the blockchain and AI that you described. Absolutely, companies like yours are actually creating a lot of jobs as well.
It is. I mean, I'll give you another little anecdote which links to this, but also links to the culture. So, as part of COVID-19 response, we're over communicating, and so every fortnight, RJ and myself are hosting an all-employee web call, And this is where I will give an update about the business, but the majority of the time answering questions from employees. And on the 7th of April, RJ talked about he's been receiving so many emails from people wanting to know how they can help our company. And it wasn't about volunteering through, philanthropic activities. It was about what more can we be doing in the company. And so on the call, he said, look, there are 5 strategic initiatives that we've got in the business. And I won't go through what the 5 are, but let's say one of them is government, right? Let's say government was one of them. I need 50 volunteers. And what I'd like you to do after the call is send me an email, and we will allocate you to one of these 5 initiatives. Within a day, we had received over 400 volunteers, if you will, saying, I'm prepared to do whatever you can, whatever I can to actually devote some time, in addition to my job, to some of the initiatives. So it basically spoke to a couple of things. One is, the culture, that people are willing, where they have capacity to be able to step up and do something. But secondly, many of the people that put their hand up, they saw it as an opportunity to learn, to be exposed to a different part of our business outside of their core area. And we're linking this now into development plans and part of their career conversations during the year to say, hey, we've allocated 100 out of the 400 already. But we see that you've got an interest in this particular area, and using that as a way of continuing this culture of learning in the organization. So it's just another example of this whole notion about, you've got to continue, find ways, be curious, and continue to learn.
Yeah, and what a better way to learn than actually working on a project of some sort, right? I mean, that's generally the best way to learn.
It is indeed. Yeah.
So Michael, any parting words for our audience?
Well, I think the parting words really is, it's an incredible time right now to be sitting in the head of HR, the chief people officer position. Someone mentioned to me last week, I was on a call and said, the GFC, the global financial crisis, really elevated the role of the chief financial officer. And I think COVID-19 is elevating the role of HR and the heads of HR as well, because the number of calls that we're on, the navigating the organization, whether it's facilities, public policy, security, technology, your own HR team, is just incredible. But you're learning every day, because every day the first 6 weeks was triaging, it was reacting. The period that we're in now is thinking about the future. It's about how do we get people back to the office safely, and then what are the things that have happened that are temporary? So some of the policy changes we've made are temporary, but what are the things that we're learning when we come out of this that will actually be permanent and long term? And that for me is a really exciting part of this next stage. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving every minute of it. And I look forward to speaking to you again, Harpreet, and I hope that this has been a helpful insight into the world of Mastercard and the human capital function.
Yes, it has been. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you.